Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All together, please. Om Jnana Timirandasya Ganandana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stabidam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Didati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sarvetam Savadutam Pridana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padang Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karana Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapcha Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhana Sudadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vangshakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevaja Patitanam Bhavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary, His Divine Grace Srila Asa Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada Ki. So today's sloka is there on the board, 45, text of chapter 16, canto 6, chapter entitled King Chitraketu Meets the Lord. Very happy event and very instructive, full of wonderful slokas. So, please repeat. Atta Bhagavan Vayam Aduna Tvad Avaloka Parimristashaya Malaha Sura Rishina Yad Katitam Tavakena Katam Anyata Bhavati Ata Bhagavan Vayam Adhuna Tad Avaloka Parishtayasha Malaha Sura Rishina Yad Katitam Tavakena Kata Anyata Bhavati Ata Bhagavan Vayam Adhuna Tad Avaloka Parimstrayasha Malaha Sura Rishina Yad Katitam Sura Rishina Yad Katitam Tavakena Katam Anyata Bhavati. Please repeat. Ata, therefore, Bhagavan, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vayam, we, Aduna, at the present moment, Pat Avaloka, by seeing you, Parimsta, wiped away, Asha Malaha, contaminated desire in the heart, Sura Rishina, by the great sage of the demigods, Narada, yet, which, Katitam, spoken, Tavakena, who is your devotee. Katam, how, anyata, otherwise, bhavati, can it be. Translation, Srila Prabhupada. Therefore, my dear Lord, simply seeing you has now wiped away all the contamination of sinful activities and their results of material attachment and lusty desire, which always filled my mind and the core of my heart. Whatever is predicted by the great sage Narada Muni cannot be otherwise. In other words, I have obtained your audience as a result of being trained by Narada Muni. Please repeat. Therefore, my dear Lord, simply by seeing you, has now wiped away all the contamination of sinful activities and their results of material attachment and lusty desires, which always filled my mind and the core of my heart. Whatever is predicted by the great sage Narada Muni cannot be otherwise. In other words, I have obtained your audience as a result of being trained by Narada Muni. Purport Srila Prabhupada. This is the process of the perfect way. One must take lessons from authorities like Narada, Vyas, Asitala, and follow their principles. Then one will be able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead even with one's own eyes. One only needs training. Atak Shri Krishna Namadi Na Bhavad-Grayam Indriyai. With our blunt eyes and other senses, we cannot perceive the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But if we engage our senses in the service of the Lord, according to the instructions of the authorities, it will be possible to see Him. As soon as one sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all the sinful reactions in the core of one's heart are certainly vanquished. Mukam karoti vachalam phangam laite grim yad kripatam aham vande Shri Guru dinatarinam atha Bhagavan vayam aduna tad avaloka parimsta shaya malaha sura rishina yat katitam tavakena katam anyata bhavati. Therefore, my dear Lord, simply seeing you has now wiped away all the contamination of sinful activities and their results of material attachment and lusty desires, which always filled my heart and the core of my heart, my mind and the core of my heart. Whatever is predicted by the great sage Narada Muni cannot be otherwise. In other words, I have obtained your audience as a result of being trained by Narada Muni. So, you're all devotees, so you all know, as Prabhupada said, the active principle of spiritual life is the order of the spiritual master. So Narada Muni, he gave Mahavidya, he gave understanding of the Chatuvyuha, how everything is under the shelter of Krishna. He gave that to Chitraketu, who was immersed under the shelter of the Maya Shakti, illusory conceptions, and therefore lamenting uselessly. He gave that knowledge and he gave the benediction. You chant this mantra and your heart's desire will be fulfilled. But not the desires that are stuck in the heart and the mind. Filled my mind and the core of my heart. Material attachment and lusty desire. Not that desire, but the desire for enlightenment, for freedom from this lamentation this material world. We think I'm the body, we think these things are mine, we exert ourselves, I'm the proprietor, they're mine, therefore I will control them, then I will enjoy them, and then we lament when we don't get satisfaction, or that it's temporary or unsatisfactory, or we lose the whole thing altogether at the time of death. So the whole material world is simply a place of lamentation. Soshiti kankshiti, hankering. Oh, I'll fulfill my desire. We all have a dream, and at the middle of that dream is ourselves being happy and fulfilled. I'll have a beautiful woman, I'll have money, I'll be respected in society. People will think I'm wonderful. And we work towards that instead of spiritual realization. Instead of understanding the ecstatic Leela of Goloka Vrindavan, Gokul Vrindavan, instead of meditating upon that eternal Leela and becoming entranced with that and putting that in the core of our heart, and the satisfaction of Radha and Krishna, seeing Radha happy with Krishna, instead of putting that in the heart, we put ourselves in the middle of some phantasmagoria. And it only causes us anxiety, kunta. Because everybody else in the whole stool house of the material world is competing for the same kind of vainglorious misery of happiness in this world. Instead of becoming detached, we become attached. We think, I'll make another adjustment, I'll make another adjustment, and then it'll all come out perfectly. It didn't work last year, but there's always another year. There's always another day of foolishness. But through the association of Angira and Narada, Chitraketu could see the fallacy. And he started to see that there's nothing in this world. Akinchana niskinchana. The devotee has no proprietorship. In the Gita you'll find that Krishna's always saying, put away your sense of proprietorship. I'm the owner. What is that? Ishavasha idam sarvam yat kinchat jagadam jagat tena taktena bunjita magrida kashasvitdanam. Everything is controlled and owned by the Supreme Lord. It's not controlled and owned by you. You're not the proprietor. You are the property, rather, of the Supreme Lord. By His grace you're getting some things, so use them in His service and don't be lusty for other things. It'll only cause you anxiety, and then you'll come into conflict in your endeavor, and then you'll just have your sinful reactions as your companion at the time of death. And God knows where that will take you. They'll drag you. So, that is the sage. The sage cut. Sadhu, cut. Cut this material attachment. It's all useless. It's only a cause of suffering. It's only phantasmagoria. Instead of trying to enjoy in this world, we should try to serve the spiritual master. Initially, we have to take to sadhana bhakti and the order of the spiritual master. Throughout Prabhupada's teachings, he's explaining the active principle of spiritual life is the order of the Guru. If you really want success, you cannot deviate 1 inch. Prabhupada's got wonderful quotes throughout his books, all on this principle. And here that principle was fully operative, and Narada Muni gave this Mahavidya mantra to Chitraketu. Chitraketu followed his instructions with understanding, chanted sincerely, and then became enlightened, and then eventually attained the audience of Shankarshan. So at this stage, but there's something very interesting here in these couple of verses, the one before also. My Lord, it's not impossible for one to be immediately freed from all material contamination by seeing you. Sometimes I've heard classes and people say, oh, you cannot see Krishna unless you're completely pure. That's not what's said in the book, in the text. Rather, when you get the grace of Krishna, when you get the darshan of Krishna, then you'll be freed of material contamination. Don't put the cart before the horse. Get the darshan, then the purification. Of course, we want to purify ourselves, but we must be careful about materialistic thought. In the material world, we're interacting with the impersonal energy. So therefore, the philosophy of the material world is impersonalism. We think because the material energy works mechanically, there are regularities, there are equations that work and so on, and two atoms of hydrogen combining with one oxygen, that makes one molecule of water, and we think everything is mechanical. So therefore we think, oh yes, if you're 25% purified, you can see Krishna 25%. We apply a scientific formula to bhakti. But bhakti is not scientific in that sense. The science of bhakti is the mercy of Krishna. What does Lord Chaitanya say? Ainanda tanuja kinkaram kripaya. By your mercy, you give me darshan, you pick me up. I am fallen in this material world, Vishwavaiva, I'm stuck here in the material world, full of desire for enjoyment, but you, by your mercy. So this is an important point. Yes, the material world, there are regularities, and the foolish material scientists think that by a mathematical formula, whether it's in physics or chemistry or biology, this mechanical formula will expose, will reveal the absolute truth. Eventually, on my pocket calculator, I'll have a big equation that will explain everything. This is impersonalism, this is Maya Shakti. Oh no, Krishna is far beyond material logic and sensibility. And that is the most important thing to understand. That Krishna is not bound, he's the shelter of logic and argument and regularities, he's the supporter of all the material functionality, but he is beyond that. And therefore he can do anything, and all those principles rest upon him. So if Krishna wants to appear to you, it doesn't matter if you're the most fallen person, or you're only 50% pure in your own terminology. Krishna can give you all the mercy he decides. He's free. That's what it says at the beginning. Abhigya Swarat. Krishna is independent and self-sustaining. He's Swarat. He sustains himself. Sri Sri Gaurnitai Guru Parampara Krishna Balaram Radhasham Sunda Dalit Vishaka Gomata Giri Govardhan Shalagra Maharaj Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. So he is self-sustaining. Nothing bears upon him except one thing. What is that? You all know. You're devotees, you should know. He's controlled by the love of his devotees. So that principle is beyond mathematical logic and any sadhana. It is his weak spot, if you like. He's controlled by love, unmotivated pure love, because that is his nature. So that affects him. He's not motivated in creating anything. The creation, material, spiritual, the Jiva Shakti, he's not motivated. He's doing it out of generosity, out of freedom, out of Leela. There's no reason in the way we think about it. It's just an expression of his ecstasy. So out of that ecstatic nature, he gives mercy to those who apply, but particularly to those that please his pure devotees, like Chitraketu did. He pleased Narada. So that's in the 5th canto, right? Mahatsevam dwaram aho vimuktes. That the service of the Mahatma is the dwaram, the gate to liberation from the material energy. So this principle cannot be forgotten, cannot be overlooked. And then, if you're trying in your own humble way, imperfect way, to serve the devotees and the spiritual master, and Prabhupada says here, the authorities, that means the Guru, the Sadhus, Mahajan, Acharyas, the great teachers of Krishna consciousness, and the Shastra, if you refer to those authorities and you worship them by trying to put their instructions into practice, then that is very pleasing to Krishna. And he reveals himself. He reveals himself in the heart. There are 3 forms of darshan actually. They're taught, you should get a Jaiva Dharma. Bhakti Vinod explains them in Jaiva Dharma. Bhava, Vak, and Darshan. 3 ways Krishna reveals himself. One is bhava, through transcendental ecstasy. The devotee feels some ecstasy in his heart. It's unusual. It's not anything I've experienced in the material world. It seems to be a different form of energy. And along with that comes enlightenment, just like Chitraketu is being enlightened here. And then there is Vak. The Supreme Lord must speak. They must be quiet. And then trying to give class in a railway station is very difficult. So anyway, the Lord will speak to the devotee in the heart, in a very soft, gentle, warm voice, and give instruction. And then he will also reveal himself, as Prabhupada says, before the eyes of a devotee. So these are the 3 forms of darshan which Krishna bestows. Bhakti Vinod explains. So we should be attentive to that. In the Upanishads, Krishna is in the heart, in the tree of the heart, with the individual soul. But the soul is paying attention to the tree, not the Supreme Lord. So we shouldn't pursue sadhana bhakti with forgetfulness of the Supreme Lord. We should be attentive. We should be turning our attention to Krishna. So this Mahavidya is very important to understand. This Mahavidya, if you read this chapter entitled carefully, you will see that Vedavyas has constructed the Bhagavatam. At this point, he wants to explain Mahavidya, and that means to you and me. Before we get on to the 10th canto and the full darshan of the Supreme Lord, he wants people to understand just how Krishna has constructed this material world, the spiritual world, and how it is resting upon him. And this knowledge, if we gain a good understanding, will give us liberation. Will give us liberation. So what is that Mahavidya? That Mahavidya knowledge is contained in the prayers that Narada Muni gave to Chitraketu. He gave this Mahavidya, and it is particularly to do with the Chatuvyuha. Chatuvyuha, the fourfold expansion. Now you've all heard of the Chatuvyuha, correct? But you may not understand what's it all about. Krishna is there. He expands as Purusha Shakti, Baladev, and then he expands as Shakti, Radharani, Swarup Shakti, and then Baladev, he expands as the Chaturvyuha. And then that is Vasudev, Shankashan, Pradyumna, Adiruddha. And then Shankashan of that first Chaturvyuha expands down, and again you have Vasudev, Shankashan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. And they are supervising, they're somehow to do with the material world. So you might wonder, what are they doing? Well, Krishna is ashraya, shelter. Krishna is shelter. So the Chaturvyuha is how the creation and the living entities are sheltered by Krishna. It is, if you like, Krishna's methodology for giving shelter, particularly to the spirit souls. So what are the functions, Vasudeva, Shankashan, Pradyumna, Adiruddha, in giving shelter? So you have heard in the Gita, Prabhupada explains that the three psychic movements of the consciousness is thinking, feeling, and willing. And then the fourth stage comes action. So the important point of Mahavidya is that just like Krishna says in the Gita, Sutre Manigana Iva, Yad Yad Vibhutimat Sattvam, everything is just resting upon me. Everything. So this is how everything is resting upon Krishna. The living entity, the Jiva Shakti, thinks, feels, wills, and then acts. Thinking, feeling, and willing, they're intertwined, they're all part of one mental process. But first we think of something, we conceive of it. So in the same way, Krishna is conceiving of us. He is giving us shelter in the same way that a father gives shelter to a son. The father is attentive to the existence of the son, and the son is attentive to his father. So this is Vasudeva. Vasudeva means one who lives everywhere. Son of Nanda Maharaj, a son of Vasudeva. So we are existing by the remembrance of Krishna. In the Gita, Krishna says, Manmana, he says Krishna to Arjuna, always remember me. But Krishna also, he is also always remembering us. We are living by his remembrance. If theoretically Krishna forgot us, we would not exist. We are conceptions born of Krishna. We are eternal spirit souls, but we are sheltered, supported, ashraya, by Krishna. We live on the remembrance of Krishna. And that remembrance of Krishna sustains us. So that is the Vasudeva function. In the spiritual world, all the devotees, they're existing, sat, they're existing on the consciousness of Krishna. Then the second psychic function is feeling. We consider something. So at this point, Guru comes in. We think, is this good or this bad? We have an idea, we're thinking of something, a conception, and then we think, is this good? Is it morally okay? Is it profitable? Is it good? Does it transgress? And then at this point, Shankashan can also, he's Adiguru, he gives us conscience. No, don't do that, don't. And we think, oh, that's right, I didn't think about that. Now in the material world, we ascribe all this to ourselves. But like I say, in the Upanishads, we are directed to pay attention to the Supreme Lord within the tree of the material body. We're supposed to. So at this point, we can consider and ask Krishna, what do you think about this idea? And we should learn to recognize what is Krishna's input, or rather Shankarshan, because he is Adi Guru, his advice. How to do that, sometimes people ask. How to understand which is my idea and what is Krishna's idea or Shankarshan's idea. Well, that's very easy if you just understand. Just like if you scratch yourself, you know you're scratching yourself. Oh, I'm doing that. But then if somebody else scratches you, you think, oh, what's that? That's coming from outside. So within our consciousness, we should try to understand what is our individual conceptual and thoughts and feelings, and that which is coming from the Supreme Lord for our guidance. We should try to recognize. So then, after thinking and feeling and considering, we come to the third stage, which is willing. So that is under the son follows the father, and that is Pradyumna, the expansion of Krishna Balaram, Pradyumna, the son of Krishna. And that means Sankalp Vikalp. We accept or reject our cogitation, our imagination, our consideration. We come to a decision about it. So that is maintained, that is resting upon, on the shelter of Pradyumna. Pradyumna is giving us that decision ability. Of course, we have that inherently, but because we are Shakti, we're dependent on Purusha. That means we are resting upon the Supreme Lord, ultimately. All these are different leelas of Krishna, the Chaturvyuha. And then the son of Aniruddha, the son of decision, son of Pradyumna is Aniruddha. And then we perform action. We either do something or we avoid doing it. We pursue our idea or we don't. So all this in the spiritual world is under the supervision, under the support, under the guidance, under the potency of Vasudeva, Shankarshan, Aniruddha, Pradyumna. And then Shankarshan expands down, and in the same way, for the materially conditioned souls, he also supports their thinking, feeling, willing, and action. And so, just like if you're a manager, the best thing, it's very easy to manage actually. I did a lot of management in the 80s and in the 90s. You just delegate. You can run the whole universe if you delegate. Just like Lord Brahma. You're in charge of the Vasu, you're the directions, you're in charge of the wind, you're the fire, yes. So the temple president, you're in charge of the kitchen, you're in charge of the Goshala, you're in charge of the shops, you're in charge of this, you're in charge. And then I'll sit in the office and with a clear mind, make sure that everyone is happy. Right? Because what's it all for? Are we running a business, or are we trying to become pleasing to the Supreme Lord? So Krishna, he delegates all this thinking, feeling, willing, supervision, spiritual and material to the Chaturvyuha. And then with Srimati Radharani by his side, he makes sure that everyone's happy. So that is Mahavidya. So if you read those prayers given by Narada Muni to Chitraketu, they brought him out of the illusion. He was a Kshatriya, trying to control events. It brought him out of the illusion unto the understanding that everything is resting upon the Kripa, the mercy of the Supreme Lord. That is the grand unified field theory. That is our Krishna science. Everything is resting on the mercy of Krishna. That is the formula that's beyond mathematics. And Krishna has constructed everything for the happiness of his expansions and his Leela. And he's very concerned and very attentive. And that is Mahavidya. And therefore, becoming, it says earlier in the text, I was reading last night, that Chitraketu, becoming more and more realized in this knowledge, was given supervision, he was given lordship of the Vidyadharas. So what are the Vidyadharas? Well, Dhara means bearer and Vidya means knowledge. Just like we have Govardhan Dhari, Giridhari, the bearer of Govardhan, the bearer of Giri, the mountain. So the Vidyadharis, they are one of the 10 Upadevas, Yakshas and Apsaras, Gandharvas, Kimpurushas, Kimnaras, all these different divine beings, semi-divine beings that are free within the material universe. So the Vidyadharis, they are particularly astute at understanding Mahavidya. It's explained in the Shastra that the Vidyadharis, they like to observe human affairs. But they don't observe, just like you see children playing, you can think this one's bigger than that one, he's pushing that, you can look at them. Or you can look at children playing and thinking their play is resting upon the Supreme Lord. Vasudeva, Shankara, Adiruddha, they are all interacting with the Supreme Lord, but they don't realize it. But the Supreme Lord is the thread upon which they are resting. So the Vidyadhara, the person who bears knowledge, sees in that way. He doesn't see in the first way. Oh, these are just kids playing and pushing and shoving and shouting and running around and having fun. No, he sees with the eye of knowledge, realized knowledge. Oh, there, Krishna is involved. Krishna is everywhere. This is the Uttamadhikari platform. What is that? To see Krishna within everything and everything within Krishna. That is the Uttamadhikari. So he sees everything, all human affairs, child affairs, grown up animals, the trees, the jungle, it's all resting upon Krishna. So the Vidyadharis, Chitraketu became so elevated in this knowledge that he was given lordship of the Vidyadharis as an intermediary session. We'll see later on how he becomes Vritrasura and this and that. There's also deeper meanings in what actually happens. So the Vidyadharis also, they're famous. Amongst the Upadevas, they're all great musicians. So the Gandharvas particularly are adept, and their speciality is singing raga very beautifully and stretching and this and that and making everything wonderful. The Apsaras are particularly, their speciality, they are also good singers and so on. They specialize in dancing. Their dancing is beautiful. And sometimes we see in this world, in the remnants of the Vedic culture, beautiful dancers. So they are the Apsaras. In the spiritual world, the material higher realms, the Apsaras are there, and the singing of the Gandharvas, and the Vidyadharis, or the Vidyadhara, they are specialized in playing musical instruments. The men particularly, they specialize in different types of drums and percussive instruments. They can play all of them, of course. And the ladies, the Vidyadharis, they sing, but they also specialize in different musical instruments, like the lute, the flute, different stringed instruments, angelic beings. And also the Vidyadharis, they have a particular propensity. They love to wear garlands. All these things are described in the Vedic literature if you research. So everybody likes to wear a garland, but the Vidyadharis, they're always famous for having some very beautiful and playing beautiful musical instruments, and the apsaras are dancing, and the Gandharvas are singing, sometimes in the court of Indra, sometimes for Lord Shiva, sometimes in this demigod's abode. So Chitraketu, he was given in charge of that, and they are particularly astute. The Vidyadharis, very elevated in this perception of everything within Krishna and Krishna within everything. And that is the preliminary stage of love of Godhead. That is bhava. That is the darshan. That is the revelation of Krishna through this knowledge. It causes bhava, then the Lord will speak, and then the Lord will reveal himself by his own sweet will. And that is, the devotee doesn't want it any other way. Let the Lord act according to his sweet will. I'm not performing sadhana as a business to bear upon the Supreme Lord. Krishna says in the Gita, those that torture the material body with austerity and the super soul within, they're demons. We don't perform sadhana because we want to get something. We just want Krishna to express himself. He's given us shelter, like the father gives shelter to the son, and then he says, now my son, you're a man. Express yourself in life. So this is the real essence of Vidya, that Krishna has given everyone facility and personality with which to express themselves. So we should understand that Krishna consciousness is not becoming just like a mechanical clone, but it is to realize one's own self, one's own true nature. And we should be bringing that out by meditating on what? The beauty of the transcendental abode and the ecstatic leela there, and becoming entranced with that. And this Vidyadhara, this Vidya knowledge of how Krishna has done things, how he has organized this material world, that should liberate us from material conception. It's happening in this way. It's because of that. Material causality, because of karma, because of this, because of that. Some material formula we've worked out, and we see the universe in that way. No, we should see that the universe from this position, the Mahavidya knowledge that Narada gave to Chitraketu, so that he would become completely liberated from material conceptions and just see everything within Krishna and Krishna within everything. And Krishna will do that. He will appear for his devotee. It starts at the beginning of the Bhagavatam. Narada Muni, he was instructed by the Bhakti-Vedantas, so he meditated. Then one day he sat down and he meditated, and Krishna actually appeared, darshan. Then he spoke to him. And he said, look, you're not quite purified now, Narada, but I have appeared to encourage you and encourage your meditation. Again, same point. And then he appeared before Dhruva. Dhruva was materialistic. I want a big kingdom. But still Krishna appeared because he was applying to the Supreme Lord, and the Supreme Lord said, why not? So throughout the Bhagavatam, Krishna is appearing in different ways, in different circumstances, and it's always out of his mercy to develop that spirit soul. So he's appearing to us in the form of the Bhagavatam and the knowledge therein. And so if we study these prayers of Narada Muni, and we see the relationship of Chitraketu's realization of Narada Muni, Narada Muni's mantras, then that will help us in freedom from material conceptions. And then we'll learn to see everything as the mercy of the Supreme Lord. And when we perceive that, we're perceiving the Supreme Lord. Because for the sadhaka, the materially conditioned person, the most important aspect of Krishna's personality is his mercy. We are stuck in this world. Kripaya, you please pick me up, Krishna. And we're not empirical. Oh, if I get this dictionary, if I do that, if I do this, then it'll work like this. No, we depend on the mercy of Krishna. And this sloka particularly brings us to the central point that you get the mercy by pleasing the Uttamadikari, the Prem Bhakta, by taking shelter of the great devotees. The great, as Prabhupada says, the authorities. So we can all do that with body, mind and words. And then we can be assured, just like it says here. In other words, whatever is predicted by the great sage cannot be otherwise. Whatever the devotee says, the Supreme Lord fulfills that. He feels obliged. I can't let my devotees' words be defeated. Na me bhakti pranashati. I can't have that happen. So whatever a great devotee says, then the Supreme Lord follows that. Out of his mercy, out of his prem, not of obligation, but out of his generosity of spirit, out of his ecstatic personality, he interacts. He gives all that supervision to Vasudeva Shankarshan Ruda, and then he makes sure that everything is okay. Shri Krishna Mahaprasada Ke Jai. So, any question? Yes. Which Leela are you referring to? Oh, Kaliyadaman. Yeah.
Thank you for the wonderful class. How can I understand that during Kaliyadaman Leela, when the Gopas felt unconscious, and then when Krishna glanced at them, they regained back their consciousness. Now, we take darshan of the Lord every day, but we are yet in an unconscious state. We haven't, fully, I'm not fully awakened in Krishna consciousness. How can I reconcile these two things?
How can you?
Reconcile.
How can you what?
Reconcile.
Reconcile, no, reconcile. How you can reconcile what?
That the Gopas were awake. As soon as Krishna glanced on them, they immediately from their unconscious state, they regained back their consciousness. And over here, I am taking darshan of the Lord on a daily basis, but yet I am unconscious.
You're not conscious. Well, how do you remember that you've taken darshan every day? You're conscious to a certain extent, of course. It's not black and white. So our realization of Krishna is on a sliding scale. It's not on and off. It's more like a volume control. 5%, 10%, like that. So yes, in the period of sadhana, we should be very regulated in our practice. And that will turn up the volume. But there's no reconciliation because Krishna, we're being sustained. Why are we staying devotees? Why are we chanting every day? That is the mercy of Krishna. Krishna is supervising us. Krishna is encouraging us. Come on now, surrender. Or we should say, Shankishan, Baladev, come on, do this, do that. Get it together. So Krishna is full of mercy. Once it's stated there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Tumara Hum, that if somebody just says, Krishna, I belong to you, sincerely one time, then Krishna takes him. And it states there in the purport, Prabhupada says, and therefore he'll remain safe for all time. So Kaliya is like a snake of envy, jealousy, right? So sometimes that puts us to sleep. Our material conditioning wakes up and we fall into envious thought, or we don't like this person and I don't like this. But then Krishna glances upon us, wakes us up. Oh, and we remember the Shastra, or something, we hear a class and something sticks in our mind. Or we just sitting and a thought comes in our head and how did I get into that? Let me chant. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And Krishna's name reconciles everything, or reconciliates everything. Yes, one question. We have to be a quick answer as well. Go on.
There is the moves of material nature, the goodness, passion and ignorance. So how do both of them work together?
Oh well, yeah. So that is interplay between Purusha and Shakti. You see, those Vasudeva, Shankishan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, they are Purusha. So the whole creation, both material and spiritual, is an interaction between Purusha and Shakti. Purusha and Prakriti, energetic and energy, Krishna and Radha. Of course, we don't want to reduce it to a scientific formula. It's actually an interplay of personalities. So yes, in the material world, the living entities, supervised and resting upon Vasudeva, Shankishan, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, there's a third factor involved, and that is the Maya Shakti, the Shakti, the Prakriti, the material energy. Therefore, there's that sloka in the Gita, Vavangsa jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manah shastra indriyani prakriti stani kashati. So the living entity is existence and its ability to think, feel and will and act and so on. That is resting upon Krishna, but he's interacting with the Prakriti through the mind and senses, through the body, and through Bahimukh, an attitude of forgetfulness, you see, rebellion against Krishna. So he's interacting with Shakti. And so then Vasudeva, Shankishan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, the Chaturyuha, they supervise and his interaction with the Maya Shakti. Whereas in the spiritual world, they are supervising and everything is resting upon the living entity's interaction with the Yoga Maya, who's expanded from Srimati Radharani. The Mahamaya ultimately in the material world is expanded from Durga Devi. So ultimately it's all Purusha and Prakriti interacting. That is the creation. It's in the beginning of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. To enjoy the bliss of pastimes, Radha and Krishna, they are one, but they've separated themselves eternally to enjoy the bliss of pastimes. And so their pastimes revolve around Vipralamba Sambhog, separation and meeting, and one enhances the other, you see. So our sampradaya is to unite Radha with Krishna. That is the business of the Shaktis. And to serve and to be happy seeing Radha's with Krishna. So similarly, in the material world, Yukta Vairag means to use the energy, the Shakti, in Krishna's service. So when we are using the material energy to make a temple, to offer foodstuffs to Krishna, to make instruments and play them for the pleasure of Radha and Krishna, we're not renunciants, false renunciants. Oh, that is useless. They don't want to engage the material energy. They want to sit and meditate on some impersonal void. That means they're refusing their real nature of uniting Radha with Krishna, the energy with the energetic. So, Yukta Vairag, what is that? Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe, Yukta Vairag Sayuchite. So when we are using the material facilities in the service of Krishna, under the direction of Guru, favorably, then that is the same. That is the occupation of all the spirit souls. To unite everything, all the energy, to unite Radha with Krishna, and then be happy. Like in the Ras Leela, Radha and Krishna are together, and then the devotees are dancing ecstatically around Radha and Krishna. And they're happy, oh look, Radha's with Krishna, so therefore I'm going to dance in ecstasy. And then Krishna will dance with you. Because what are the devotees? They are all expansions of Radharani's Seva Bhav. We are Shakti, Jiva Shakti. So we are all different aspects of Radharani's love for Krishna. And that's our real nature. When we act in that way, when we use everything, all energy, all thought, just for the satisfaction of the union of Radha and Krishna, that's our natural condition. So Mahavidya is a step. This knowledge is a way of seeing everything is resting upon Krishna and clearing the mind of material conceptuality, interpretation of reality, and understanding that on the platform of that Mahavidya, the Lord's Leela is taking place. And my role is to unite in my own humble way in the union of energy and energetic. That's our role. That's our raison d'être, as the French would say. So when we realize that and act accordingly, then we're in the healthy condition. And so when we perform sadhana, we should have this prayojan, this goal, prema purush artha. This is my real nature, and this is what I'm working towards. Like I said at the beginning of the class, the materialist has got some vision of himself in some material heaven or something. My football team won the World Cup. But the devotee has a conception. Oh yes, my conception is the transcendental ecstatic Leela of the Lord. And maybe one day, Mam Namaskaru, I can get some service in that way. Maybe one day I can do something. And until then, I'm the servant of my, even then, I'm the servant of my Guru. And that order of Guru, that is Mahat Sevam Dwaram, that is my gateway. And so beyond that gate, I see the Leela of the Lord. And I meditate upon that in the core of my heart. Like Lord Brahma, right? 5th canto, 5th chapter. Chintamani Prakarasat. This is his realization of the transcendental abode. And before that Chintamani sloka, that's 29. Then if you read a few slokas before that, then Lord Brahma says, this meditation is my gift to my Sampradaya. So the Brahma Samhita is the revelation of the transcendental abode. Shriya Kanta Parama Purusha Kaltaravo Dhruva Bhumi. In that abode, everything is a song and a dance. The flute is the favorite attendant. Time is conspicuous by its absence. So the Brahma Samhita is essential because it reveals the transcendental world. And then when we further advance, we can get the revelation of the 6 Goswamis. But we should approach that revelation with great awe and reverence. First, just conceive of the ecstasy of the transcendental Leela. And then Krishna will bring us. Just like he's bringing Chitraketu to this. He's made him the boss of the Vidyadharas. They're traveling all over the universe, singing songs glorifying Krishna. And then he brings him to another platform, Vitra, Sora, and so on and so forth. So Krishna brings his devotee along. Or we should say, Baladev. Baladev brings you to the lotus feet of Krishna. And then, under the supervision of Radharani, you perform bhakti. So Baladev is Adi Guru, brings us to Krishna, but the ultimate guru of the transcendental abode is Srimati Radharani. She is the Vrindavan Ishwari. So all these tattvas, all these siddhantas, they should be understood. Or else we'll just speculate. But in this case, when we understand these, we're understanding actuality. It's not speculative. Our focus, our consciousness is focused on reality. And by focusing the consciousness in this way, on the transcendence, you realize the reality, you see. So, we'll finish at that point. Srila Prabhupada Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.